What's going on, everybody? It is that time again, the Sooners Illustrated podcast, episode 190 on this Thursday, July 10th, 2025. Josh Callaway, Collin Kennedy, 51 days until the Oklahoma 2025 season opener against Illinois State at the stadium on August 30th. Moving closer, almost inside 50 days. We've got a lot of recruiting stuff to get into, a new commit this week. We've also got some big name targets to get into that will be committing this weekend. Got a big top three. Got a lot to talk about. And Collin and I will also, we'll get into the AD search a little bit, the early stages of it after Joe Castiglione had his big retirement earlier this week as well. So a lot going on. A surprisingly newsy week for the middle of July. It's kind of been a lot of things going on this week, but we're here with you and excited. A little bit of a late drop here this afternoon, but appreciate you finding us wherever you are listening or watching from. Collin, you're out of town right now, so appreciate you making the time, as always.
Yeah, of course. I'm out here in the great 918, back inside the Sooner State.
Got the right
sister-in-law.
shirt on.
Yeah, I shout out my guys at University of Tulsa. You know who you are. Got me this shirt, so I'm repping the fellows over there, the new Golden Hurricane staff. But sister-in-law gave birth to twins, my first set of nephews. So very cool. Very excited to be out here in Tulsa and helping them transition into the world. And now excited to talk some ball.
Absolutely. I'm very excited to get your input on the Joe Castiglione retirement and kind of everything that's going on with that. Obviously, we had the press conference on Tuesday. If you missed it, it's on the YouTube channel. Joe C., President Harris. Obviously the statements, everything are good, but it's time stamped on the video. Whenever they do the questions, last like half hour or so, they take questions from the media. Some really interesting comments from both guys there. So I recommend you go check that out if you haven't seen it already. Again, it's on the YouTube channel. We'll do that a little later in the show. We do have a few names, candidates we want to maybe throw out there and kind of start to sift through the very early stages of that search, which I think is going to stretch on for a while. That's the sentiment that I think I've been getting from Oklahoma. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But before we do, Collin, we'll do that later on. Got a lot of recruiting stuff to get into. So we've got our recruiting guy here with the great Collin Kennedy. A programming note off the top as well. We're going to circle back, CK and I, on Monday. We're going to flip things around next week. So we're going to have another show on Monday to where we get to talk about some of these decisions and then some of the other stuff going on. And then Tom Green and I will be in Atlanta for SEC Media Days, which are next Wednesday, if you can believe it.
Wild.
Less than a week. Yeah. So Tom and I will be in Atlanta for SEC Media Days. We'll have coverage from Atlanta. And then Tom, James, and myself will all circle back probably on Friday next week for the next show to kind of wrap it all up. So that's kind of what we're looking at the next, week plus here. Busy stretch in the middle of the summer and fall camp right around the corner and all that good stuff. But recruiting continue to churn. Collin continues to stay busy. Oklahoma has been very, very active in the 2026 class, this summer, the last month or so. And they're on the board again on Monday with Tyler Ruxer, the 2026 tight end. He is a composite 4-star, 3-star for us here at 24/7 Sports, Lincoln City, Indiana native. He joins Ryder Mix as the other tight end commit in 2026. If you go up the composite ranking, Collin, Tyler Ruxer is the third highest rated commit in this class behind just Bo Bentley and Daniel Odom. Collin, I know we've talked about it on the show, obviously a couple of times, but also just talking to you, off air in passing. You're pretty high on Tyler Ruxer. What are kind of the things that Oklahoma fans should know about him? And what kind of a duo is this with Ryder Mix? It seems like Joe John Finley, man. I know he's not a popular guy right now with the OU fan base because of the state of the tight end room. Put together a nice class here in 2026 with Mix and now Tyler Ruxer.
Ruxer's pretty high up there in terms of how he's thought of in relation to the other commits in this class, and rightfully so. He's one heck of a football player, and I would tell you right off the top, this is a recruit who, as we continue to do our due diligence and our guys on the national scouting team at 24/7 Sports continue to evaluate the player, gather further context, this is going to be someone with a chance to rise up even further in the rankings. And he's already highly thought of. I believe he's an 88 3-star in the network. Like you mentioned, 4-star composite guy, because he's just a really interesting, kind of unique tight end prospect. So helped Heritage Hills, if I remember correctly, is the name of his school, win a title for the first time in, I believe, 2 decades. Won wide receiver, all conference honoree, back-to-back years for both his conference and then I believe it's the IFCA. He's already, I put it in a story I wrote the other day, extremely decorated. I believe he has a chance going into a senior season to set a couple of program records there. And it just continues to reiterate the fact that this is someone who has not already solidified himself as one of the best tight ends in the area in the Midwest, but he's ascending into one of the top tight end recruits in the country. So 6'4", 220, probably best described as just an extremely natural pass catcher. He can go out wide, inside, very versatile in that sense. I think he can make plays at all 3 levels of the field. I think that there is definitely something to be said about, and I hate to say it, but maybe the level of competition that he's playing out there. But at the same time, it goes to show you who he is in the fact that more often than not, he's by far the best player on the field. And playing receiver, he's playing corner at 6'4", 220. You don't see a lot of tight ends playing corner at any given Friday night. And then he's had a couple of return situations under his belt, making plays in the third phase. And, I'm a sucker for guys who contribute in special teams, and that's what Ruxer does. I believe he also has 100-meter times under his belt, some basketball. This guy just checks a lot of boxes, and he's still developing his skill set. And I think Oklahoma, on that note, kind of getting into the recruitment, recognize that. Like, hey, Ruxer he's still developing, because the other part of this is he's probably not ready to be a day one blocker at the collegiate level, getting some more strength on the field and getting more pop behind the hands. But he's filling out. He's getting stronger and bigger. And Oklahoma back in just May offered him. And you fast forward from May to July, they get this thing done because they recognize the receiving threat that he is. And I believe that they recognize the complete skill set he can be. And so Duke was very heavily involved here behind the scenes. West Virginia, a couple of other Midwestern programs like Purdue, Northwestern. It all adds up essentially for Oklahoma to recognize, hey, we have a real opportunity here with a talented tight end, not too far away. And we've talked about in the past, Oklahoma has to kind of make the Midwest one of its primary recruiting territories, with the SEC so heavily involved throughout, obviously, the Southeast into the South Central. So you get one of the best in the Midwest at the tight end spot. And I think that you pair him with Ryder Mix, you're thrilled, and more on that in a second. But I think what really sealed the deal here, Josh, is when Ruxer not only got to build a relationship with Joe John Finley. Joe John Finley, definitely a primary reason why this recruitment was won by Oklahoma. Sure. I think a big deal for Ruxer was getting to sit down with new offensive coordinator Ben Arbuckle and getting to talk to him about what the new look offense at Oklahoma was going to look like, what they plan to do, and then how he would fit in that. Especially because, and I was thinking about this the other day, there's been a lot made of, okay, how much is Ben Arbuckle truly going to use multiple tight ends? Is there room for multiple tight ends on the field in this offense? And we obviously won't know until the fall. But in Ruxer's case, someone who can play a lot of receiver for you at the next level, this offense is probably pretty enticing, especially if you get sold on the idea of playing, hey, a little bit of receiver, we'll get you in some 12 personnel duo tight end stuff, and then we're going to move you around and make sure that you're getting the ball in different areas of the field. I think all of that enticed Ruxer to go ahead and shut this one down. And you got to tip the cap to Joe John Finley and Ben Arbuckle for getting this thing done quickly, because, again, only a couple of months to get this commitment locked up. And now you pair him with Ryder Mix, a guy that, like I've mentioned in the past, I think is probably a little bit more, maybe closer to being a traditional tight end, hand in the dirt type. And then you you have complementary skill sets in that if Ryder Mix has a chance to really develop into a 3-point blocking tight end with some receiving ability as well, because he is talented in his own right, you then feed off of him with someone like Ruxer who can make a lot of plays in the receiving game. Overall, it just makes a ton of sense for Oklahoma, and it's a really exciting get. And again, one of the better ones that they have gotten to this point.
For sure. Composite number one player in Indiana, kind of similar sentiment to, back when we talked about Deacon Schmidt, composite number one player in Colorado. Like, you get the number one player in a state, right? Almost no matter what state, like that's nice, right? That's always going to be something that you like. Collin does a good, article often on Sooners Illustrated for VIP members of things to know about the new guys when they commit. And I was looking at the Ruxer one this morning, and, you just detailed it, but what jumps out to me certainly is the athleticism. I mean, the fact he's playing cornerback, he's returning punts, like that's stuff you just don't get from a big body tight end very often. And, this offensive class, just kind of perusing it, it's, not a finished group, but Bo Bentley at the top, Daniel Odom, Tyler Ruxer, DeZeph and Walker, your running back, Schmidt and Best. Obviously we talk about Ryder Mix. There's another big name offensive weapon that's going to come off the board this weekend. We'll talk about him in just a minute, but it's a pretty nice little crop for Ben Arbuckle. And look, it's not done, right? I mean, you still want to add more, but considering the year you just had offensively, and you had to bring in a new OC and everything, like, to put together a group like this is pretty exciting, I think, right now. And Ruxer's fits right in there. I mean, the top 3 highest rated recruits in this class are on offense right now: Bentley, Odom, and then Ruxer. So it's exciting. And Arbuckle should be pretty happy, I think, with this. And credit to Joe John Finley. Again, I know Joe John's not he's kind of fighting an uphill battle with the fan base right now. Mix and Ruxer, good duo. If that's, there's a lot of potential there. So, give him credit, give him his flowers for it, So.
Yeah, I think that you make a great point. The fact that to this point, after the season that was just had in Norman, to bring in a new offensive coordinator and to go out and get guys who are already sitting at the top of the class on that side of the ball, when obviously Brent Venables in that defense, they've been rolling.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I think that for me, this really reiterated, like, hey, man, like, Joe John can go and get guys for sure. And I think that when you get a guy like Ryder Mix, who's hard-nosed, tough, he's a legacy recruit. So, like, the University of Oklahoma means something to him. The other thing I should mention with Tyler Ruxer is it's like he's a yes, sir, I'll do it type. Like, extremely high character, great kid. Like, will talk to anyone and everyone. This tight end duo, these other guys in the class, this to me really solidified in my mind, hey, man, Ben Arbuckle is doing some damage on the recruiting trail. Like, he's really getting guys to buy into the vision that he has on that side of the ball. And if that's already kind of paying off, if that's coming to fruition currently, imagine what that could look like if things go well this fall. And suddenly Arbuckle's already kind of getting the pieces together to get that offense the way he wants it to look. It's really exciting. I mean, it's got to feel good if you're Ben Arbuckle, being on the job this amount of time and already being considered one of the best in the office at recruiting.
No doubt, 100%. So a great pickup there with Ruxer. He's their 15th guy in 2026. They're still hanging out about the low 30s in the class rankings, but one guy who could definitely change that in a hurry, who we're going to get into next, the other kind of big news of the week, Jake Kreul, who the very highly touted elite edge rusher out of IMG there in Florida, put Oklahoma in his top 3 this week. Collin, you're the right guy to ask, obviously, because what is there to make, if anything, of this? I mean, we know that Oklahoma is, in position with Kreul. We talked about that on the show a few times, and we've talked also, I mean, after Bo Bentley, like, this was the next guy as far as priority. I mean, this is an elite, high-end, high 4-star edge rusher, a top, a composite top, like 30 almost-ish player in the class. Certainly very safely within the top 100 in 2026. He puts Oklahoma in his top 3 this week. What were the takeaways or thoughts from you on that? And just, I guess, a little bit of a temperature check on him. Obviously, this is a huge one hanging out there. I jokingly just talked about the rankings. I did a little, the old 24/7 class calculator. With Kreul, this class goes from the low 30s into the mid to high teens in one guy. And that's where Kreul is from a metric standpoint. What are your thoughts on Kreul right now after he puts Oklahoma in his top 3?
This is a big deal. So I actually was subbing in on a virtual radio station, if you will, that I'll usually help out at from time to time. And it's based out of Austin. So there's a lot of Texas Longhorns fans and Texas beat reporters who are on those shows. And when this dropped, this was actually something we dove into pretty heavily, because the context here is that Jake Kreul, he has a rough top schools list before this of the likes of Ohio State, Colorado, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, Texas, and then Florida. And Florida, as we've talked about here on the past, but for those that might be newer or whatever and not familiar, Florida has been Jake Kreul's childhood favorite school. The Gators were the dream school growing up. He's been a fan of them since he was a kid. And I was talking about this earlier today, and I think that it's where you kind of have to start. It's become very apparent to me in covering Jake Kreul's recruitment that he's doing his due diligence. He's asking a lot of questions on these visits. He's very inquisitive, very curious. And I think it all boils down to the idea that he wants a plan. He wants a developmental process, like a clear layout of how things are going to go whenever he goes to whichever school he chooses. And I think that out of the Florida visit specifically is when we really started to learn, like, okay, this guy is kind of peppering these programs with questions. He's trying to see what they're going to say and see if it aligns with what he wants out of defensive line development. Because, I mean, this is a guy that, and I was telling the fellows of this earlier, this is a guy who's in high school and he's going to camps right now and helping train other high schoolers. I've never really seen that before. But he's just a Brent Venables guy, man. I was joking. I was like, Brent has to be watching those videos fired up because the guy's coaching his peers and he wants quality coaching, which is why whenever he drops the top 3 now of Oklahoma, Texas, and Ole Miss, that's a big deal because, number one, it knocks out Florida. And it felt like, I know I talked to a lot of folks who felt like Florida at one point had the slightest of leads before his visit in Norman. And out of that trip in Gainesville, like Florida is going to have one of the best defensive lines of the country this year. They're going to be stacked on the line of scrimmage. A lot's exciting out there at Florida. They got DJ Lagway. Like, there's kind of a newfound belief in Billy Napier in that group. And so, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is it was a setup at Florida that I thought many believed Jake Kreul will probably buy into the way that things are going, especially with, again, his kind of personal affinity for that program. But I think number 2, he sets that aside because whether it's Texas, who's getting a lot of guys drafted right now and really investing in the defensive line. I mean, Josh, they landed 5 transfer portal defensive tackles. Again, something I've never seen before. Ole Miss, who, I mean, you and I watched it last year as well as the folks out there did. That Ole Miss defensive line, man, like Ole Miss is not playing around when it comes to the defensive line of scrimmage. And they have shown time and again that they're going to invest in that position group. And I was talking about this earlier today, and I feel like it's important. Landon Barnes, the defensive lineman out of Duncanville, 4-star edge rusher, he picks Ole Miss. And I don't think that we've necessarily seen Ole Miss as a program that's going to win highly coveted high school recruitments compared to portal recruitments. But if they're going to invest in defensive linemen, it's probably more affordable for them to do so at the high school level than the transfer portal level. And maybe that plays a role here, especially, again, if they have proven to show how much they care about that position group. And then there's Oklahoma, right? And Oklahoma, I felt, was the leader for Kreul going into the summer. I felt like the Sooners had done the best job of showing Kreul just how much of a priority he is to them. I mean, I think it's become pretty apparent. Like, this is pretty much Brent Venables' favorite recruit in the 2026 class. And I think that means something. Chavis, I believe during the contact period, went out to see him in person like 2 or 3 times, multiple occasions, which, if unaware, that doesn't normally happen. And then with Valdon Sound kind of looking elsewhere, at least for the time being, like, this is Oklahoma's highest priority on the defensive side of the ball. So with Florida out, with this like defensive line development backdrop set, and then Kreul, the personality that he is, I just feel like this sets up for Oklahoma to pretty much take control of the driver's seat the rest of the way. And it all comes down to timeline now for me. If the rumors are true and that Kreul might legitimately take his process into the fall and he's going to go take in-game trips, that's a big deal. That's a really big deal, because then that adds another layer to the stakes that are every Saturday for Oklahoma this season.
Yeah, right.
And obviously Texas and Ole Miss are both expected to be very good teams this year. And so, yeah, man, this is a pretty significant development. I mean, again, just the removing of Florida alone is enough, but to pretty much have this shape up to where Oklahoma's arguably in best position of the final 3 for their favorite defensive prospect remaining on the board. This top 3 is a bigger deal than most, should I say. And I'm very fascinated to see what comes next.
No, I mean, he's the big name, right? He's the big fish, and you touched on it. But, when we had talked about him before, it felt like Florida, that was certainly what jumped out to me. What was right. Where did Florida go, in this top 3? So that's significant. Like you said, he feels like a Brent Venables guy all the way through, and that Brent Venables loves him in this class. He just feels like, I mean, you could totally see him being on one of those Clemson national championship teams, or obviously even Oklahoma the first time, with Brent in the 2000s. Like, he's that type of player, right? And he's a fascinating guy to watch. We've talked about it before. You just mentioned it, that he has sounded willing to go into the fall, which, do you think that helps Oklahoma, the chance to go play games and to kind of show? Or, that's one of those things that's kind of tough to say. You establish a top 3 in early July. You wouldn't think you would need that long. But, if that's the way it goes, that's the way it goes. Does that help Oklahoma if it gets to the season? Is it one of those like longer goes, it can help, or not necessarily?
If it were me trying to answer almost both ends of the question, like, I personally believe the longer this goes, that hurts Oklahoma, because so here's why I'm thinking that way. Oklahoma's prioritizing for the longest time. They nail the official visit. They get the last OV. They've got all the momentum. And now Florida is out. Well, the 2 programs we thought were at the top, one of them's out. Like, you should be winning this thing, especially off the heels of that most recent exposure point. But so this is probably of note. Ole Miss just gets a big time edge rush recruit committed in Landon Barnes. They appear to be for real in terms of the candidacy here. And then today, as we record this, top 247 high 4-star edge rusher Jamarian Carlton out of Temple, Texas, is going to make his decision. Texas has been involved for the longest time there. And whenever I've talked to folks out in the Texas realm, they're like, well, Texas probably isn't really pushing for Kreul all that much because they're involved with other edge guys in the cycle, including Carlton. But Josh, Texas is not expected to be the choice for Carlton today. Baylor has surged, Texas Tech,
Yeah.
I believe A&M is in the mix as well. And so, like I mentioned, I was doing radio talk earlier today, and we were talking about Carlton. It's like, yeah, man, he was once seen as a foregone conclusion to go to Texas, and now it seems like Baylor's going to win that one. Does that mean Texas then ups the ante for Kreul? We don't have that answer yet, but you see what I'm saying? And then the last thing I would say, here's how it could help Oklahoma or really hurt them. But I let's say it helps. We know Kreul is a very curious guy. Like, he wants to see it. He wants information. If he does go into the fall, and this means that he's going to be watching Oklahoma's defensive line with a ton of intent on a weekend-to-weekend basis, well, you and I and the folks out there know this Oklahoma defensive line is going to be legit. Now, how you feel about the overall team or the outcome of games, that's obviously up for debate. And how Kreul views the importance of that, I couldn't give you a firm answer. But if he values that and things don't necessarily go all that great, and this is an if, then you have to have that conversation. If it goes well and Oklahoma's defensive line looks the way that we all feel it's going to look, then that's elevation that's hard to beat if you're Oklahoma. So again, it's layered like anything in recruiting, obviously, but yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. And that's why I think it's so important to continue to reiterate, like, hey man, if this thing does go into the fall, and there have been mentions of even like October. So like distance.
Like well into
Yeah. Like, it's, again, you bring all of that up and you have to wonder what that looks like whenever we get into that kind of territory,
Sure. No doubt. I don't imagine we've talked about Jake Kreul for the last time on this show.
No.
We'll continue to update you. He's going to be one of the big ones, one of the big storylines throughout the rest of the summer and into the fall from a recruiting standpoint, to say the least. High-end guy here, edge rusher for Oklahoma, and we'll continue to monitor. A big name that we will continue. I mean, we have not spoken about him for the last time on the show.
Yeah.
As for a couple of decisions that we know when they're going to be, because they're coming up this weekend, got a couple here we wanted to make sure we get your kind of final thoughts on before they get locked in. We'll just go in chronological order. We'll go with Jordan Clay, the 4-star wide receiver from San Antonio, Texas. He's committing tomorrow, Friday, July 11th. This is a guy we've talked about, a few times here recently. The Baylor candidacy there. Obviously, Clay, 6'3" wide out. This wide receiver cycle for Oklahoma has been kind of weird. Right now they have one guy committed, Daniel Odom, but there's some other big names hanging out there. We talked about that widely last week. We kind of sized up wide receiver recruiting in general. But Collin, Jordan's making his decision tomorrow. Final little, I guess, check-in with you here, one way or another. Oklahoma, Baylor, certainly, after being kind of the big name that we've talked about. Where do things kind of stand from your view with Jordan Clay and Oklahoma going into tomorrow?
So Oklahoma is continuing to chip away, or it has attempted to do so over the past couple weeks. He obviously was in town for the Champion Barbecue. That was his last official visit. And I think Oklahoma did well during that exposure point. I think that the tricky part was obviously the fact that Baylor, almost similar to the way Oklahoma has led for Kreul throughout a majority of this process, Baylor has kind of been seen as the team to beat for Jordan Clay. And I think out of the OV, once the dust settled, you get off the emotional high, it was still a matter of, okay, did Oklahoma really dethrone the Bears in terms of its lead? And I don't know that necessarily happened. And then conversations were ongoing behind the scenes. They've continued to be, but now probably a little bit more than 24 hours out from the decision, I still feel like Baylor's going to be the choice, because the other part of this too, and I wrote a story about this the other day. So again, feel free to join us at Sooners Illustrated for VIP content. Baylor is involved with several other highly touted wide receivers in 2026. One of them being Chase Campbell, Chase Campbell still seems to be leaning towards Texas Tech. And if he were to choose Texas Tech, well, then Baylor only has further incentive to go ahead and try and lock down Jordan Clay, who's going to be someone that they view as like a crown jewel of the class of sorts. And so I think that Oklahoma did about all it could do, understanding what Baylor had done in this recruitment. So would it shock me if he had a change of heart last minute and chose Oklahoma? You can never be too certain, especially in today's era of college football. But my pick is on Baylor, and I think that the Bears, if they get this done, have earned that commitment, if that makes sense, because they've prioritized Jordan Clay longer, arguably, than anyone in this cycle. And it's easy to see why he appreciates that effort, especially with him so often saying, I'm not a logo guy, I'm a relationship guy. Well, his relationships pretty much reside with Baylor.
So if that's the way it goes, and we'll say Clay ends up with Baylor tomorrow, where does that leave Oklahoma with wide receivers? I mentioned they have one committed right now in Daniel Odom, a really good one, but it's one. There's still, I mean, we talked about wide receivers last week. What's left to be accomplished? And could you see them circling back with anybody? I mean, where do they kind of stand? Where does Emmett Jones kind of stand if that's the way it goes? What's left to be done for a wide receiver cycle?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because I thought about trying to make sure this gets into the show, but I didn't know the best way to do so. If Clay goes to Baylor, then I don't think you can really talk about anything else besides Davian Gross. Like, suddenly, it's tunnel vision on Davian Gross's recruitment, because we can talk about a number of other names. They can go after a number of other targets, but it really boils down to the fact that you cannot afford to go 0 for 2 on Clay and Gross, especially if they both end up at Baylor, which is a possibility. Because like I mentioned in that story I wrote the other day, if Baylor misses on someone like Campbell, they have London Smith, they have another wide receiver committed who's talented. I want to say Davian Peters, maybe. I'm blanking on the name. And then they would potentially have Jordan Clay. If they don't have to worry about the upkeep of the Chase Campbell recruitment and everything that comes with that, well, then they too suddenly go tunnel vision on Davian Gross. And there are others out there. Houston has been mentioned. You know, Houston's making a lot of moves behind the scenes in the recruiting scene, and they obviously have a 5-star quarterback in Keyshawn Henderson. So you have to consider the Cougs here. And then Florida, Florida has been involved with Davian as well. That being said, many have widely believed, including myself, that this one would come down to either Oklahoma or Baylor. Baylor at one point held the lead going into Davian's OV and Norman. Coming out of it, I thought OU took the lead. At the end of it all, like, Davian Gross technically should have been committed by now. We're literally on a any day now type of track, because he mentioned to a lot of us at 24/7 Sports he wanted to be committed by early July. Well, it's July 10th now, and names are coming off the board, which, if you're Gross, you're like, all right, I mean, I'll just wait it out because that gives me more leverage. If you're Oklahoma, if you're Baylor, if you're any of these other programs, you're like, dude, what are we doing? Like, we're sweating over here. So, I think that's really where you got to go, is depending on what Clay does, the next order of business, what's going on with Davian Gross. And, well, I think Oklahoma's in a really good spot there. You just, like, Baylor, I know that it's confusing, but Baylor is serious, and that suddenly becomes the next battle that everyone turns their attention to, especially with, again, receiver recruiting being what it is, like you mentioned.
No doubt. We'll keep an eye out for that one tomorrow. Big domino there for Jordan Clay on Friday. I'm sure you'll be plugged into 24/7 Sports for the latest there, whether that's here at Sooners Illustrated or anywhere in the network for the kind of the latest on Jordan Clay there. Another big one this weekend, a guy we've talked about a couple times as well, coming up on Saturday, July 12th. is Jacob Eberhart, the four-star athlete, composite four-star athlete. Oklahoma's looking at him as a safety, which you talked about before. Brandon Hall trying to go get a high-end athlete here, just simply put, from St. Louis, Missouri. Collin, he's committing on Saturday. This is one we talked about before as well on the program. Another big one hanging out there. Oklahoma's recruited safeties so well under Brandon Hall. The next kind of big one here is Eberhart. How do things kind of sit with him going into the weekend? And if it's not Oklahoma, who would it be? I mean, I know in-state Missouri has been one we talked about before. Where are things kind of at with Jacob here going into the weekend, and he makes a decision on Saturday?
Yeah, I've got a crystal ball prediction in favoring Oklahoma for Jacob, and so that kind of tells you where I'm at with it. When I put that prediction in, there was buzz about maybe in Illinois, maybe in Missouri, some of these Midwestern programs that Jacob has been interested in for a long time. But I'll be honest, a big part of that prediction was me essentially saying Brandon Hall's not missing. I just like if there's a guy on Oklahoma staff right now that I will make future bet type crystal balls, I'm taking the future on Brandon Hall's guys. And so I like the Sooners to potentially win this one out this weekend. My confidence level in that pick's only about a 5. So like I mentioned, I put it in as more like the network wants us to put our picks in more as like a chatter buzz, not here's where he's going. And so for the folks out there that are confused, like we want the fans to be interested in the behind the scenes momentum of these recruitments. And so for me, it was like, I'm hearing a lot of Oklahoma. I know the belief in Brandon Hall. I like Oklahoma to potentially win out this recruitment, and I still think the Sooners have a chance to do so going into Saturday. Again, Illinois, Mizzou, some other contenders, but I just think Oklahoma did enough during that OV to really impress him. I had a source say he was arguably having the most fun on that trip out of anybody. I think that means something. And Oklahoma has a heck of a pitch, man, at safety. I mean, especially him. You know, this is a guy who's been recruited as a receiver by some schools, as a linebacker by some schools. And if you're Oklahoma, you're having him look at OU's 3 safety structure and some of the guys that they've got rolling right now between Robert Spears Jennings and then Billy Bowman and some of these other cats. Like, yeah, I think Oklahoma should feel really optimistic about what could potentially come down the wire on Saturday.
6'3" is what we have for Eberhart. Big kid. And yeah, big one out there. I mean, for fans, I know that it was like always looking for like a point of reference. Should Oklahoma get him on Saturday, he'd be the 3rd highest guy in the cycle from a ratings perspective, just behind Bentley and then Daniel Odom. I mean, he'd be their highest rated defensive guy in the class, just like that.
Yeah.
You know, if that's the way it goes. And this is a player that I think, you know, you're really high on. I certainly am, as well. And Brandon, they've recruited. I mean, this is a position that they know what they're doing. Right? There's a few of these on the roster that you just kind of feel like that they know what they're doing, and safety is one of them. Brandon Hall has been so excellent since he's been in Oklahoma. So big one there on Saturday. We'll be sure to obviously let you know over as soon as Illustrated, Oklahoma247sports.com. If he does jump into the pool, do you know, is it on a Saturday? Do we have a time on Saturday? I have to put you on the spot. But
I don't have a time off the top of my head. I don't think he said a ton. I'd have to go back and look, but I would assume he'll be on his Instagram account. So that, and then for Clay as well.
Yeah, this is why if you are a subscriber as soon as Illustrated, you turn on the text alerts here for situations like these. If you're a VIP member and you sign up, you have to sign up for it. We're not going to just force it on you. You can sign up for text alerts, and when there's breaking news, what do you know? We can send you a text with breaking news, which we often do we save it for legitimately breaking news. You know, we're not going to do it for every little thing. Kind of loses its luster if you do it for everything. But commits and breaking news, we'll let you know. Just another one of the many, many perks of subscribing as soon as Illustrated and 24/7 Sports. So do it.
Yeah. Do it. Looks like 6:00 Eastern for Eberhart tomorrow.
Eastern, even though he's in Missouri.
I don't know if he's Central or Eastern. I'm not entirely sure. Well, we'll call it Central to be safe, but
the early evening. Look a lot.
You know what? And you know what? I say that it's 6 o'clock. It'll probably be 6:45, 6:30.
Oh yeah, that's typically how this thing goes. The Ruxer one wasn't exactly on time, and he's not to single him out. That's about how it is across the board, to say the least. So yeah, big recruiting weekend, and we're going to wrap those decisions up certainly on Monday, and we'll have some more stuff to talk about. Also, again, we're flipping the schedule around next week. Collin and I will be back with you on Monday to catch up on all that. But before we go today, I did want to quickly, not quickly, you don't have to rush, but before we go here, kind of wrap up the athletic director, search, or at least a little early check-in on it. Also, Joe Castiglione announced his retirement he announced it formally on Tuesday. It's reported on Monday. James and I talked about it a little bit on the podcast on Monday. And then again, the full pressers there from Tuesday morning where he kind of got to expound on his decision. Collin, Joe C's not leaving today or tomorrow, right? I mean, he's going to be around potentially for this entire year as the AD. He's going to be the AD emeritus at least until 2028. So Oklahoma is not in any sort of rush here. They're not under the gun, which President Harris talked about on Tuesday. But the search begins. Randall Stevenson is going to be kind of leading the search here, which is a very interesting decision. To say the least, guy who hasn't been at OU that long, coming over from AT&T, doesn't even have it's an interesting decision. And President Harris was inclined to point out that it's not like Randall is going to be choosing the new AD. He's just kind of leading the committee, if you will. Any names you want to go ahead and put out there? I mean, obviously on Monday, we brought up Zach Selman. That's the very obvious name that everyone is kind of bringing up. It's a guy that was widely viewed and looked at as probably Joe C's successor at some point before he went to Mississippi State. He hasn't been to Mississippi State that long, but, Oklahoma comes open, and obviously the Selman name carries a lot of weight in this state and at the University of Oklahoma. So he's a big, obvious one. You could touch on him if you'd like and throw out any other names, but just kind of this week, what's kind of your sense of all of it with the AD search as Joe C going to retire here sometime in the next year?
Yeah, if I'm Oklahoma, I am really not in any rush to.
No, you don't need to be.
Get this stuff. And not only do you not need to be, but it's probably in your best interest to let this thing play out, right? Because this is going to be one of the most important decisions in university history. I mean, like legitimately, if we're talking all of the University of Oklahoma, whoever becomes the next athletic director in the changing landscape of college athletics, or at least what it now is today, what it could be. I mean, this is putting you either on par with everyone else in the world, or you have a chance to set yourselves back. And I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but like,
sure,
you got to nail the hire, right? You got to nail the hire. And then there's, you go down all these rabbit holes of like, this individual will probably be making the call on Brent Venable's future. They will not have any allegiances to anyone on staff,
right,
in that department, and they're going to be making a lot of decisions as far as the future of a number of Oklahoma's athletic programs in the SEC and whatever else, right? And OU's obviously trying to get a lot of facilities upgrades all over the place. I know that you wrote a story the other day about the baseball field. Like, they'll have a hand in that. Mm-hmm. I guess I'm just really trying to reiterate the fact that, like, no matter if we bring up a name today or somewhere down the line, I don't know that Oklahoma's looking to get this thing wrapped up anytime soon. And I don't think that they should, because you really have to think, okay, if we have Joe C in place, we can use him as almost like a consultant to a degree. Let's watch and see what's out there. Let's see what people do, especially knowing that this vacancy is out there, right? Mm-hmm. And I'll get to another layer that I think is important in a second. The three names that I felt were the easiest to mention right off the top.
Sure.
Zach Selman, Ren Baker at West Virginia, and then Kirby Hocutt at Texas Tech. So you talked about Selman. My very quick blurb on him. If he were to get the job, in my opinion, I wouldn't say a word. Like, I would totally understand it. Ren Baker is from Oklahoma. He has been around the state of Oklahoma in a number of different capacities and levels. He is also a very relatable and outgoing presence, the type of personality that I think Oklahoma would welcome to be the successor to someone like Joe Castiglione, who was so accessible and I think at times very transparent when he needed to be. And he was very real, no matter how you viewed him. He was not like very many athletic directors out there who hid, right? And I think that maybe Oklahoma values that, and whoever takes over for him. I've been around Ren Baker a little bit. I don't know him personally. Don't get that,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to act like we're buddies. When I used to cover North Texas a little bit, he was the AD at UNT, and I have been around Ren a little, and I just think that I think a lot of him. I think he's really good at what he does. And he's already made waves at West Virginia. I mean, the guy went and hired Rich Rod and then took Zach Alley.
Yeah, right.
Helped get that done for Rich. And then Kirby Hocutt, who, curious for your thoughts. I almost thought in writing up some of this stuff, Kirby makes the most sense on paper, because you're talking about a very decorated and tenured director of athletics. The guy has served in a number of roles outside of AD stuff. I mean, he was with the College Football Playoff Committee not too long ago, things of that nature.
Very Josie-like in that regard.
And Kirby worked for Josie, and he was at Oklahoma and helped OU raise a ton of funding for the athletic department whenever his career was in Norman. And then you talk about even the little stuff like, he has OU, Josie, whatever else. The guy played in the same linebacker room as Brent Venables at Kansas State. I mean, and now I think a primary layer to this is clear athletic department success, meeting obviously the standard that is Oklahoma in every sport, but also forward-thinking mannerisms and execution. Well, I don't need to tell anybody what's happened over the last few years at Texas Tech, whether it's the basketball program being what it's been, the baseball program, what the football program has been in the past times, and what it's going to be inevitably in the years to come. Because, again, what Texas Tech has been willing to do in the new era of college sports, a lot of that falls on the shoulders of Kirby Hocutt. He's done a lot to make sure that Lubbock is going to be fine with what's to come in college athletics. And I mean, the softball program, man, like, if you really think about it,
money they're throwing around. Yeah.
Texas Tech, Kirby Hocutt, like, whoever takes this job at Oklahoma is going to have to be willing to prioritize softball over a lot of other programs. Well, Kirby knows the deal, and Texas Tech's one of the few places out there that can probably say that. The thing is, I don't know how feasible Kirby Hocutt is, right? There's a lot that goes into that, not only the job security and situation he has at Texas Tech, but also, like, how willing are you to go potentially hire somebody with ties to Brent Venables? I don't know the answer to that question, because that obviously contributes to a potential decision that has to be made. Not that it's definitely coming, but it's out there. It's a possibility. And all that to say, those were some names that came to mind for me. The last thing I will mention is that I know that there's been a lot of buzz because I believe someone in the press conference, and I would be curious for some of your takeaways from that presser,
Sure.
Someone said something to the effect of a outside the box hire. I can't remember the exact.
I was going to ask you this. Like, if you had to put money down one way or another, an active sitting AD somewhere or not, something off the wall, something that we're not prepared for, because it is a different era of college sports, right? I mean, the job of AD is very different now and moving forward than the job that Joe C has done for the last, nearly 30 years. It was interesting to me that Joe Harris on multiple occasions said, Joe 2.0, the next Joe C. Like, he's referring to like wanting a similar guy. But, I also wonder, would, like you said, the out of the box, that's been like the buzz term the last couple of days. Is it just as simple as they're going to go find a sitting AD somewhere else and do, or could you see them, landing the CEO of some random corporation, right? I mean, that's really interesting to me, because I don't know how that's going to go.
I feel like this is them basically opening the door of endless possibilities. Like, when I was thinking about it, whenever all this was coming out, like you mentioned, the Joe C 2.0 thing. Okay, well, that would tell you we want someone who's worked in college athletics for a long time,
right,
knows the deal, knows what's going on.
When Joe C was hired, he had been the AD at Missouri for 5 years, I think. So if you're repeating that formula, it would be someone likely in the SEC, if possible, or at least the Power 5, that's been doing it for a little while, if you were going to repeat that formula.
And he had been working in college athletics before that as well.
Yeah.
And so I also felt like, though, okay, twofold. Number one, it's like, this is Oklahoma basically saying, look, we're fully aware of college athletics not being what it was when we hired Joe Castiglione. So maybe they're looking for Joe 2.0 in terms of someone who is adaptable and willing to take risks and things like that. And maybe this is them basically saying, we're willing to explore all possibilities and candidates, and we want people from all paths to be on the table for us. We don't want to maybe I shouldn't say it this way. Oklahoma's basically covering for the possibility that they make an outside of college athletics hire, and suddenly the narrative is different than if they hadn't come out and said this. You know what I'm trying to say? Like,
yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah.
If they went out and hired some random business ops guy, everyone is reacting to that very differently than the way they probably would now that Oklahoma has said, look, like, we want to make a quote unquote out of the box hire. We want to go get someone that we feel is almost like a visionary in this unpredictable landscape. But yeah, I also felt like number two, maybe it was them like not putting themselves in a box and not necessarily like forfeiting to the candidates out there potentially, right? Like almost giving up some of their leverage, you know?
Yeah.
You want people to not feel like they can dictate how this goes. And I think Oklahoma, in a number of ways with that, basically said, like, we're gonna be the ones to figure this out, and we're open to anything as we do our due diligence. So, and I think like Randall Stevenson's part of that, right? Like that was a kind of out of the box hire at the time. It's proven to be a good one though, because clearly Randall Stevenson has come in and had a ton of influence on the athletic department's operations and will continue to do so. Yeah, I feel like if I had to bet, do they hire a sitting athletic director or someone outside of the realm? I would still go sitting AD, because I just feel like that's the most sensible way to do this, especially when you, in theory, should be able to get one of the best or one of the most sensible out there for you, right? But they're open to anything clearly. And I guess we're going to
Yeah.
continue to be open to that as well, because the possibilities are seemingly endless in this search.
Yeah, I agree. I'd lean sitting AD, but like you said, wouldn't necessarily rule out anything. I tend to fully, I mostly / fully, whatever word I'm looking for, expect it to be an outside hire. If we were to keep it in house, I would just throw out the name Marcus Bowman for Oklahoma just to make sure I mention it. If that's the way it goes, he's the deputy AD right now. He's been in Oklahoma since 2020. Was at UNLV before, Pittsburgh before that. He's a younger guy, kind of one of those risers, in the athletic program. I know he's well thought of. He's, very active, very around, very visible, like Joe C. If they were to go in-house, which again, I tend to think they probably will hire someone from outside. But if they did, that would be a name to note if you're an OU fan, just to earmark the name. He's been around a bit, just another name to keep in mind, right, as a possibility. But it's going to be interesting. And Joe C, or Joe H, I should say, Joe Harris was asked something about the effect, like, what's the timeline here? And he was pretty vague, right? He didn't really give much of a hard timeline. He just said, hey, Joe C has given us a runway. We're not in a massive rush. And so, I could see them making this hire during the football season, after the football season. Maybe we get to this, maybe not till after this entire school year, right? I mean, I don't know. It could really be any length of time. So this will not be the last time we talk about this, because it's, going to come up, but we'll see. I'll say if updates become apparent that someone's kind of, coming into the crosshairs as a possibility, we'll be sure to let you know at Sooners Illustrated and maybe talk about it on the show if it fits, but it's going to be interesting. Big hire, obviously. Huge hire for Oklahoma to take them into the future. And you kind of referenced it. There may be a decision having to be made on Brent Venables. I mean, that everyone knows that. It's kind of the elephant in the room, right? If this season doesn't go the way it should. If that's the way it goes and they're making a new hire for head coach, you're talking about a complete change of the guard for Oklahoma sports and also Oklahoma football in a very short time. You're talking about new AD, Jim Nagy, new coach. I mean, just a total restart, which could be good, but it's scary, right? I mean, it's a total restart if that's the way it goes. And obviously, Oklahoma's preference would be to win 10 games this year, and Brent Venables gets an extension, right? I mean, that's the preference, but it's interesting times for Oklahoma sports right now, and Oklahoma football, obviously in particular. Interesting times.
And I want to say quickly too, like that specifically, not that decision, but the build up to it, how that potentially impacts this timeline. Does the search hasten if things aren't?
Yeah, that's a good point. You would like your new guy to be a part of the hire in theory, right? Yeah.
But if you're Oklahoma, it's like you probably want to. I subscribe to what you brought up. It's like you would probably want to wait until after the football season to go get somebody when things are freed up, and you kind of can let them settle down a little bit. But yeah, like how does this go if the season and everything that comes with it goes a certain direction? What does that mean for the athletic director specifically? I have no idea, man. It's very interesting though.
Going to be very interesting and be fun to keep up with. And obviously we will do so over the coming months and however long. We'll be checking in on it and over at Sooners Illustrated and obviously here on the pod as it becomes necessary to do so. I think that's it. Collin will be back on Monday. We got almost an hour in and we buried the lead. You can tailgate on the North Oval now. Did you see that?
Yes.
That's crazy. First time ever. You can tailgate on the North Oval, which I'm shocked. Everyone is familiar with OU's campus if you're an OU fan, but if you're not the South Oval, not where the library is. The North Oval, which is on the other side of the library, over by like the clock tower side of the – I say clock tower, the clock side of the stadium, the south end zone.
Mm-hmm. So, the administrative building there and all of that. And
I never had
shocked
over there, so I barely ever went over there. But yeah, that's interesting.
I had a couple, but it's quieter And I
Much
know
fun.
that I don't know that I should say this
season.
I mean, look, back in my days of being a young college student and my days of tailgating, if you will, the security guards on campus were not all that thrilled if you were in the North Oval. So
No.
I'm shocked they gave up that piece of property. But how cool is it that now arguably the most accessible stretch of campus by Campus Corner is free game? I mean, I like that entire stretch from Campus Corner through the north down into the South Oval. Tailgating galore. That to me is awesome.
This is stuff that Oklahoma needs to do, and they're adjusting. It's piece by piece, but going on the road in the SEC this season, most of these places, I think of like Auburn in particular, you could just tailgate anywhere.
Yeah.
The entire campus is just littered with people and tents, and it's just the whole campus is just one big football party. Okay, so like this is a good step, but like there's still for Oklahoma to get to like that level. You got some ways to go, but this was a good step today. So a nice little piece of positive news for Oklahoma. On
remember when Brent brought that up specifically in his Auburn postgame presser? Like, hey, when you come in, did y'all see him everywhere? And they're like,
yeah, like, I kind of forgot about that. Yeah,
maybe that was
insane.
Maybe that was Brent being like, hey, look at all these tailgaters everywhere. Look how cool this setup is.
I mean, it's just like right outside of buildings, where people have class and stuff. They're just, people are just hanging out. Like, oh, yeah, it's just not like that, but it could get there. I mean, it could be. It's up to you, OU. You could make that happen. Anyway, I think that's it. Loaded show. We had a lot to talk about. Big weekend. Collin and I are going to be back with you on Monday. Like I said, we're going to circle back on Monday. We're going to talk about some of these decisions, get into some of the other ones that are coming up. And we're going to preview SEC Media Days. Tom Green and I are going to be there in Atlanta. We're going to actually get there Tuesday and then circle back. And obviously, OU's on Wednesday. So we'll be there for the full OU day. Tuesday is Auburn day. Auburn is bringing Jackson Arnold. So there will be something to talk about from Tuesday as well. We'll get into all this on Monday. We'll preview it. And then we'll circle back later next week to kind of wrap it all up here. Then get back on a normal schedule the following Monday, which will be getting real close to fall campus up by that point. So we're getting close. We're getting close to football season around here. It's exciting stuff. That's it for now. For Collin Kennedy, I'm Josh Callaway signing off. We'll see you next time right back here Monday on the Sooners Illustrated podcast.